Hey everybody, welcome back to the PetaPixel Podcast. And last week I said, you know what, no more weird episodes. We're going to get right back to normal. And I forgot that Chris was going to be in Japan. So it's another weird episode with me and my buddy Jaron Schneider. Hi, Jaron.
Hello. Yeah, you're stuck with just us this week. Chris is doing some work out in Tokyo. He's gone all week. So we're going to do this episode without him.
Yeah, but the good thing is it's perfect timing because you just got back from IBC.
I did.
There have been some video cameras launched, and last week we really talked about like our Alaska trip and quite a bit about the new iPhone. We haven't had enough time really to talk about how the kind of like mid-level video landscape has shifted dramatically, and we've got all kinds of news from IBC.
This is all
the two of us. We can riff,
us.
right?
That's right.
Sure, I haven't touched a C50, but I can still.
I touched one.
I watched Gordon Lang's video, so, you know, I got some thoughts. So we're definitely going to talk about that, see where things are. Lots of news going through. But, Jaron, I always like to start these things with a question.
Yes, you do.
And you know what? Chris is gone.
Yes,
so
he is.
This week, I got to wear not only my editing, directing hat, but also my reviewer cap. I'm triple hatting it this week. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be doing a few reviews that are going to come out over the next few weeks. But I want to know, when you get something in, because you've been doing reviews for a while on different products too, what is your favorite and least favorite type of product to review?
I think lenses would probably be my least favorite because you have the testing. Like I was never a fan of lab testing, and so when
you want to be out in the world,
I just want to take pictures, but like people care about stuff that doesn't necessarily show in real world pictures, which is, to me, that's just a fascinating thing to think about, is where like, okay, fine, I have to shoot a test chart in order to show you like how the corners look, but like in all the pictures I take with it, corners are always out of focus anyway.
It's not really irrelevant. Yeah.
So it's always been baffling and a little confusing to me that that's something people give a crap about, but and I don't. But that's why I don't typically like them. But way back when I was doing a lot of reviews, I would avoid doing like the entry level and also bridge cameras back when those were very common, because I don't like them, and it was really hard for me to put myself into a mental perspective where I could be like, here's what I need to be, the user who would have this. Would I like it? And like, because the answer was always no, I don't like this camera. I'm not having a good time. So I just didn't enjoy doing them. So I stopped entirely. I would make someone else do them because I would not be objective.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the struggle, right? Because
Chris is good at it.
Yeah, talking about like the video thing, I'm just like, well, I really like having an EVF, but statistically they keep telling me like no video shooters care whatsoever, except like me. I think Gordon Lang likes one, but that's probably it in the world for people who really care about that. So yeah, it's always difficult to just be like, oh, I want to put myself in that other person's mindset. I mean, that's definitely always tricky. What's your favorite thing to review?
I like computers. I like hard drives, just because it's fun to look at big number go up. I don't like software. Software is also just the worst. Like we used to do like Adobe. Whenever they did big releases, they used to do them manually. Now that's kind of like they're kind of sprinkled out, so it's not really worth doing like Adobe Photoshop 26.
Yeah,
2026.
It's not like your big CS drop where
we don't do that
you've got a whole ton of new features to test.
Yeah, Jesus, doing software was a nightmare because there was like 30 new things and you had to find some way to test them all. So we eventually were just like, nah, I'm not gonna do this. Yeah, I think computers and hard drives I like a lot. Monitors are kind of fun.
Is that because you're just dealing with hard data there? Like there's not, it's like the Olympic events that require judges that I'm not a fan of, because I'm like, that's subjective how well that timed out to the music, where like a hard drive, it's like, you know, does it move files across fast? Does it burst into flames? And conclusion.
Does it hold the speeds? I think it's because like reviewing it's really difficult to review cameras and lenses well. Like, I hope people appreciate that about Chris, because like it's not easy to do. There's so much you have to think about. I often forget to do certain things, and I'll be like, well, crap, now I got to go back out again.
Yeah, then you're back editing it and realize, it's always worse to have to go back after and do it.
It's terrible. And like, I wish I said something differently, or like for video, especially, it's bad. Like if you're just doing written reviews, that's different. Written reviews are fine. I like that. I can plow through those, and I can spend my time. And if I make a mistake, that's fine. I can just hit delete and rewrite it. But like videos are so hard. What about you?
I mean, by far my least favorite is phones, damn it, Jaron. That's what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, Chris
by the time this comes out, the iPhone review will be out there. But I said, like, it's great when you can just get a hard number of finding or something like that, where phones, it's endless variables, you know. And even in terms of like evaluating picture quality, it's like, it's all computational. So it's like, did it do the stack of the images properly that way? Maybe you had one bad test and it'll do it great the other 95% of the time.
Like when we got on here, you were telling me that even like overheating was giving you inconsistent results.
Yeah, so I did it once, just like rolling video. Oh, that seems a little off. So then I'm like, oh, I should like disable all connectivity or something like that, because one of those phones is working as my phone at that point. So it's probably good. So I do all that, try it, get a different result, but then it's like, oh, it was a different ambient temperature. So yeah, like redoing it like 3 times. Where with the camera, I check the temperature, I hit the record button, I walk away, and everything is great, and I know my findings are solid. So yeah, it's all those endless little variables that just make it so damn difficult to properly test. But you know, I'm gonna go totally the other way. I love doing lens reviews. It's something I really enjoy. Like camera reviews.
You've got 2 coming.
Yeah, exactly. 2 and a sort of camera review as well coming. It's a crazy week. I don't know why I agreed to all of these things. But it is really nice for me to just, especially with a prime, I enjoy just being able to go out and focus on a particular focal length, because Chris gets the opportunity to do that all the time. I don't really, to just, really kind of hone my skill at one focal length, see, as well as just evaluating it. It's just a fun creative challenge for me. So I'm actually, despite the fact that it's tricky, and I'm getting more comfortable on camera, but I still don't love hosting reviews. That's difficult, but I'm actually looking forward to going out and taking some pictures, especially, I mean, they've been announced. We can say it.
Yeah,
it's a 135 and a 35, like 2 of my favorite focal lengths. Yeah,
exactly.
So I've got the Sigmas going out, and we got Levi Hallwell coming back. We actually got quite a few comments on that Makey video that he shot. Like, oh, I love these compositions. Jordan's on fire this week. Like,
but it was Levi.
I mean, maybe I was on fire that week working on something else. That was Alaska week, but no, that was Levi. He's great. I'm looking forward to working with him again. So
yeah, for sure.
That's all coming up.
All right. So for this podcast, where it's just going to be me and Jordan chit-chatting, we're going to go over a ton of video stuff that got announced because IBC was this week, which was the International Broadcasting Convention. I'm probably making that up. I bet it's something else, but it's a big show.
They always throw one in. It's always what you think, except for the one word.
Well, that was in Amsterdam. Nobody calls it by what it's actually called, like the full name. So that's why I don't know what it is. I've never heard it spoken.
No.
But we are, I was there, and a bunch of stuff got launched, either at it, before it, or right after it. So we're going to cover all that. And then once we get through the news, Jordan is going to talk a little bit about like what some of these things mean in a broader perspective. Even though we haven't reviewed or touched everything yet, we can still look at the specs and say like what these companies are aiming for and like what's the idea behind them and where do they compete. So we've got some questions sprinkled in too from you guys who have asked things on the podcast in the comments. So we'll put those in there too, just to make sure that we cover all our bases. So let's get started. This week's podcast is brought to you by you. Well, some of you anyway. Well, are you a member?
Are you talking to me or the audience? It's tough to tell because you're kind of looking at your computer. I don't know. But yes, I guess you're talking to all of us if you're saying members.
Yes. Brought to you by PetaPixel members. And you know what? We would really appreciate it if you considered a PetaPixel membership. That is support directly to Chris, Jordan, me, and everyone here on the PetaPixel team to help us keep doing what we do. It's only $3 a month or $30 a year, but we're not going to just ask you to hand over money for watching.
Although that would probably be worth it, just for like emotional support for all of it. We'd be like, yeah, I'm glad you appreciate what we do. That really means a lot. But no, we got to give them more than that, right, Jaron?
We do. We give them a lot more than that. So the baseline benefit, the first one that we came out with was, well, if you read the website, get rid of all the ads. Suddenly the website is much easier to read and is a lovely experience. We highly recommend it. But that wasn't enough.
As a person who's often like working on a project and I have like the PetaPixel like open on the side corner of my display and then there's an animated ad running around and then you're like, oh man, I got to go hide that corner. But then how am I going to get back to that window? It's a nightmare, Jaron. So that's why I just log on to my PetaPixel account and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, well, that's great. The next thing that you get... Yes, I was. The next thing that you get is access to our sample galleries, which we update regularly with all of the most recently reviewed cameras and lenses that Chris and Jordan take a look at. And within those sample galleries, you can download JPEGs and RAWs from all of those cameras and lenses. For the lenses, you get Chris's big chart. You know, the one he shoots where you can zoom in and check out what the detail is.
Focused on corners and center. Very important.
Correct.
We're not just focusing on the middle of that chart like a loser. No. We're doing it properly. And as well, we just said, I'm doing lens test this week. If you want to download my raw files, this is your opportunity. It's coming. And you can then jump right on to the comments underneath the articles and say, I think Jordan slightly misexposed this image. And I'm going to have to take it. That's how these things work. Yep.
Someone has definitely emailed that to me. They're like, hey, I think your pictures from the GFX 100 RF, they weren't perfectly sharp. And you know what? You're right.
Why wasn't this shot at base ISO? Like,
sorry.
You're right. Okay, yeah, you got me, man. I was shooting motocross before I shot the flowers, so my shutter speed was faster than it should have been. You got me. All right.
But fine. You know what? We do respond to all those emails. I actually got one before where someone noticed that there was an error in the URL for one of the downloads, and I fixed it immediately. So thank you to our members who communicate with us back and forth. That's great. We appreciate all of you. But you know what? We're still not done. We offer more. So if you are a member, you get $15 off your first purchase at Moment Store, and they sell lots of cool stuff there, both for your phones, which is what they were originally known for, as well as like full cameras. They're a Fujifilm dealer, so you can get, straight up discount there. We offer 5% off your KEH orders. So if you want to buy something new or used, KEH has both.
Yeah, some of that's like expensive stuff. 5%. That's more than going to cover your membership there if you're grabbing like some glass or something.
You also get 25% off the PetaPixel merch store. So essentially, for this paltry $30 a year, you easily make that money back with our discounts. And we also give you those benefits. So it's hugely worth it. We really appreciate it to all our members. And you know what? More is coming. We are currently in the process of having some content that will only be available to members. Spicy, delicious, wonderful content. I don't know if spicy was the right word.
Yeah, that makes it sound like foot things again, as Chris likes to say.
Not that.
Yeah, it's not. I did not sign up for that. They can have my raw files, but that's it, as much as they can dig into my personal life.
We're actually working on some education content that is specific to PetaPixel members, and one of the reasons we decided to go this route is so that AI couldn't scrape it. So it's going to be locked behind that for those who are interested in learning more about the craft. But I'll have more information to share on that in the coming months. But we definitely have like the pipeline created for that. So we'll work on that next. Before we move on to the first thing on our news list, one thing I wanted to point out is that for years, PetaPixel has not been properly on Apple News. It has been, we haven't been able to get ourselves, for some reason, despite our excellent relationship with Apple, to get into Apple News so that you could read all our articles like within Apple News, not just the RSS feed. That changed last week. So now, yes, we are on Apple News. Do you use Apple News, Jordan?
I do, yeah. I mean, I'm not on the paid tier of it, but it still knows that I'm into photo, video. So I'm constantly seeing like Digital Camera World and DP Review is always right there. And it's like, but we have an article about that too. And some of those are written by our usual co-host, Chris Niccolls, and it's not showing up on my Apple News feed. What's up? So look at that.
This is what it looks like now on Apple News. And it is, honestly, it's really good. Like, I like to read the website this way. I think you should too. If you're an Apple News reader, like this is this looks really great. We're also on Google News. Of course, we've been on Google News for a long time. So if you're not following us on either of those platforms and you use these to daily, I highly recommend adding us to your favorites because it looks good. And that's a great way to ingest the content we produce.
But you should still get a membership to browse the site ads free, right, Jaron?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, ads will eventually show.
What did we have to do for Apple to acknowledge us? Because you weren't even at Apple Park. I assumed you would have just just open palm slapped somebody when we were at the park and been like, get us on Apple News, and it would work. But
it's totally separate teams from the people we work with, so that they're not super helpful in getting us that. We worked with them and actually did the proper procedure. It took over a year of us like figuring out how to do it. But we did. So anyway, we're there now. Trial is over. Great. Let's talk stuff. Let's start with what came out first. Canon C50, the smallest and lightest cinema camera that Canon has ever made.
Tell me how small and light, because I haven't touched this thing yet, and you have.
It's not that small and light when you put the included handle on there. Like it's actually pretty big. It's still light. Don't get me wrong, but it's a bitty like large device once you put the handle on. The handle's not required, of course. You can take that off. I do like that it's included. I was not expecting that. Usually that's like a $300 add-on. Mm-hmm. But I did hold it. It was very light. And it had the 85, which was also announced, the 85 millimeter VCM, which is shockingly small. I want to add that thing's also tiny. Together, it was a nice package. I will say I was a little surprised that it didn't have IBIS, but I'm sure there's a reason for that. Jordan,
well, there's like historic precedent. Yeah, Canon C-series cameras have never included it. And I think that's actually why they started doing the V designation on some of their cameras, is to say like videography as opposed to cinema. Because yeah, if you've got a giant crew or whatever, no, you don't necessarily need IBIS. It's going to go on a steady camera, a gimbal or a dolly or whatever if you need camera movement. And I do know that that's a huge issue for people who are doing a lot of vehicle work. We heard about that from Panasonic because they use GH5s for the Grand Tour for a while, and they were like, we had to do a version without the IBIS in there. So, I mean, it's an option for sure, but it does absolutely kind of tell you which crowd this is for, because I find IBIS enormously useful.
So here's the thing, and I was thinking about this because I was talking with the Canon Europe people at IBC while holding this camera. And in conversations with them, they have this very specific user in mind. The Canon is the most stringent about this. And we'll talk about Nikon in a second, because Nikon is like the opposite. They do not have this one. They close their eyes and they have this camera in their hand and they see the user that is going to buy it. And that's
there is no edge case with Canon.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's always been the case. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, for example, the R1 not having waveform in it was because that's not something someone who would buy the R1 would use. So even though they have the software to just like check the box and include it in there, they unchecked it because someone in their ideal user of the R1 would never use that. Which
it's like there's a clog in the brain of sports photographers where they can't understand how to use a waveform, which they can. For sure,
Canon just thinks that they never would. So like I wanted to ask you about that, because to me it's like, I understand that their cinema series has always been made for like these high-end video guys, but the pricing of this camera shoves it into a tier that interests way more people than would typically buy like a C400. So it just feels a little bit confusing to me when they don't seem to have this camera have features that would appeal to that wider audience.
Yeah, I mean, remember the R5C was the exact same story, where they took the R5 sensor, packed it into that body, removed the IBIS on it. And I can certainly say, like, it might have sold well in some markets. I don't know, but I never see them out in the world. I feel like that entire segment has just been gobbled up by what we're going to talk about it a lot. The Sony FX3s are everywhere. That kind of small creator camera. And that's exactly the price market that this is in now. So, yeah, I do think the IBIS having that taken off there makes it a great like B or C cam on a massive production, but you're going to sell a lot more to the creator crowd in this, and the lack of IBIS there is going to be a real strike.
Like,
the other thing too is Yeah.
Sorry, I keep interrupting. I apologize. Keep going.
No, I was just going to say, like, the other thing too is, Canon does have a bit of a reputation for like the warpy IBIS. So back when the R5C came out, it was like, well, I don't love moving that camera anyways, because anything wider than a 24, it looks weird. But they've ironed that out since the R5 II. So again, makes it even more odd to me that we would not see that in this. Sorry, what were you going to say, Jaron?
No, I'm still like, I just wish that Canon was a little bit more flexible. As far as like, I think it's just generally how they see themselves corporately. They're a pretty inflexible organization. They design cameras for very specific users, and they just don't deviate from that. And I think that's a good transition to let's talk about the Nikon ZR, which to me is a very flexible camera. And this is what I'll say this leading into it. I did an interview with Nikon at IBC. And I have a huge set of stories that I'm going to do. I have to get them all transcribed and whatnot. But one of the things they told me,
we got scoops.
It's a sneak in there about what's coming. But we asked them, well, what's the plan for this? Like, we have red at the tie end, and now we have the ZR. Is there room around the ZR to fit into this line? There's a very
clear gap. Yeah.
Nikon's answer was no. This camera was designed to fill that entire gap. Everyone from the small creator all the way up to right to the edge of when you'd buy a red. That's what they were saying. Will they evaluate this over time and see if like there's something they're missing or if other people are wishing for more? Yes, they definitely will do that. But for now, they feel like they've filled that whole range. So it's like the polar opposite of what Canon does, in that Canon will fill that cinema line. I mean, they'll pack that with as many cameras as they can, as with these users they have in mind. While Nikon's like, we put everything into this camera because we think that there's someone who will want that at all ranges that fill this.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. I think they're also just worried about if you're a potential ZR purchaser holding off because there is such a clear gap there. And, let's see what the higher end body is like and then make an informed decision. I'm sure they're concerned about that as well. So I would obviously be like, yeah, the only one in the video market for the foreseeable future is this model. But yeah, it does also make sense with the type of features that they put in, like the internal RAW recording and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was one of the questions we asked. Like, why have so many internal RAW recording options? Like, who's going to use these? And essentially, like, we just wanted to make sure that everyone who could possibly want to use this had the formats available to them, which is a good answer.
So it'll work with basically any workflow out in the world. And we'll touch on ProRes RAW maybe a little bit later, because that's also seen some interesting developments this week. But I do really feel like the ZR, when I reviewed it, I'm looking at it in terms of, again, a creator camera, things like that, where it's like, yes, it's a micro HDMI port, but you have this beautiful back display and internal RAW recording, so it's not as necessary.
Correct.
Where I think you saw a lot of people coming from more of like a film, like a crew background, being like, no, this isn't a professional camera for that reason, because I'm going to be hooking it into...
The micro HDMI was the stick?
Well, we're hearing a bunch of people who's, it's like, yeah, I mean, if it has to go into a video village, that is a real strike for sure. But I think the audience, like I was saying with Canon's C50, is much larger for people who are going to run like a single camera and shoot off the LCD.
Wouldn't you think that the same general user who's interested in the ZR is also interested in the C50?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, and there's a very clear differentiation between the two of them, which I find, it's just so interesting, their thought process on the two of them, because they're both trying to make a small, light cinema camera.
Right. Except Nikon did it for $1,000 cheaper.
Yeah, the price on that. And it really makes me wonder, like, how much of the price of all these RAW recording cameras are people paying licensing on stuff? Because this is just a shockingly low price, and now Nikon
doesn't have to.
They just have to pay Apple at this point, so...
Right, because they own the other ones, which is, I mean, was a really smart purchase for them.
Puts them in a really good place.
I just was reminded recently that the purchase of Red cost them $80 million. That's it. That is remarkably low for They were probably looking at like we would pay that in licensing fees for internal RAW over
the next
years.
few years. I bet that's exact because Red started that lawsuit when the Z9 came out, and then it went away, and then suddenly it all worked out really well for Nikon.
Well, maybe Nikon is thinking that the ZR fills a larger gap because at the high end, Nikon lowered the price of a new version of a RED camera, and that's the V-Raptor XE, which is a half the price of a V-Raptor X with some things removed to make it a little bit more approachable.
Yeah, and the big thing there is a lot of the high frame rate recording has been scaled back a little bit. So I wonder, one potential thing, if you don't want to be cynical, is the thermals are a little bit different in this. And it's such a way that manufacturing it cuts cost in half, which would be really surprising to me. The alternative one is they're making a push for some market share, and Nikon's been doing this. We keep saying Nikon products are less expensive than we were anticipating recently, but they really don't want to piss off the people who paid $30,000 for a Raptor quite recently. So look, here's a less expensive option. It doesn't do quite as much as the high-end version out there. And then I sort of suspect maybe, give it a year or a couple of years, paid firmware update for the base model to add all the features back in from the more expensive flagship. That is something I could totally see them doing. It's something Sony did back in the day, the F5, F55 days. Yes, get the base model that doesn't have 4K down the road, just pay for a 4K upgrade. So people feel like they got their money's worth for the first little while on the more expensive model. I could see them doing that. That's kind of my theory. Or maybe it's completely different internals in it. We don't have an answer on that yet.
So I have a question for you. The RED V-Raptor XE is going to cost $15,000. That is this very, very close to the price of another camera.
I knew you were going to hit this segue.
So I'm going to move that up on my board here because I want to talk a little bit about it. So we got pricing on the Fujifilm GFX Eterna 55, which, by the way, I want to point out that when we were using the Eterna 55 to shoot a movie and make a behind-the-scenes video of how we did that, we did not know that it was going to be called the Eterna 55, and we also did not know what it was going to cost. Now we do. The 55.
There was a bet that was started in Alaska for a steak dinner when Jaron comes up to Calgary at the end of the year between the four of us. So it looks like Chris, Alex, and I will be taking you out for a steak dinner.
I'm just almost clairvoyant with my knowledge of pricing. I guessed what? We were doing Prices Right rules, closest without going over?
I think you guessed $13,000, and we went quite a bit lower. I think Chris was like $9,500 or something like that.
That's insane. I knew that was going to be wrong.
Yeah. I said 12, so I was close, but you win. It's a lot of money. I mean, it's kind of pushing it outside of the owner-operator range a little bit more, and more as like a dedicated rental camera.
So what I was going to ask, now that we know how much it costs, would you rather have a V-Raptor XE or an Eterna 55? And I'm not actually sure what comes with the V-Raptor XE. I don't think it comes with the handle, a monitor.
No,
none
you're
of that.
going to have to rig that up. That's the classic RED. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is a more full-featured camera on the Fujifilm.
The GFX actually ships with a handle and an LCD, a very nice LCD, mind you. We actually got the actual specs on it this time. It's like 3,000 nits or something like that. It was very nice. But I actually already know the answer to this question. You probably would still want the V-Raptor, correct?
I still would at that point. Yeah. Just
why is that?
Not. Well, and the thing with the GFX is they're saying you can pop anything on this, and it's just going to be a trade-off between, and we're going to touch on this later on the podcast, but essentially like, hey, do you want to bin and use a larger area or crop and get high resolution but get more rolling shutter? There's always, every time you're making a choice with resolution and your recording area, you're also factoring in how much detail you're actually going to capture and your readout speeds. Where the RED, it's a global shutter. You don't have to worry about that. You do still have crops with different resolutions because you're recording RAW, but I do think it's just a more flexible flexible. It's a video first sensor. You know, that thing was built for cinema. The GFX, they were like, hey, maybe we can use this photo sensor in a video camera. And it's progressed that way ever since. Really, the GFX 100.
Yeah. So more on the Eterna 55 before we we'll loop back to it because there's a question that has been asked and you just touched on rolling shutter. So we will talk about rolling shutter. But the general concept behind the Eterna is that it's supposed to give you Fujifilm color, which I will agree does look really good. Fujifilm color looks nice. I really like the F-Log 2C. And then also access. So with that, you get access to their LUTs, which they're making a whole bunch of them that are based on Fujifilm's like film simulations. And then you can also tweak those LUTs and re-upload them. I think the camera can hold something like 16 LUTs at a time. Lovely, nice. It's just there are some genuinely good questions from people who are like, who's going to buy this and why? And it's like, because you touched on it. There are limitations to this thing. And I spoke with someone who shot a film. He was the DP for it. To try and answer some of those questions last week. And that really the answer is flexibility with lenses is 100% the main reason someone would buy this. And it can kind of slot into any other camera setup. So you could use this alongside anything else and kind of put that footage in if you wanted to. But that is the main reason. And we'll see if it resonates, especially at the $16,500 price. Compared to like an Alexa 65, though, it's way cheaper. So all right, let's talk about the Pixboom Spark.
Yes, I think it's real. Like at first, they're like, "Look at this amazing little box here; it'll do anything." And I was a little bit skeptical.
I was pretty skeptical too, but I think it is real. They had one apparently at Build. I missed it. They were shooting at a booth in Build, and cool. They had this at NAB, a very early model at NAB, and it looks like they are prepping to actually have this in the hands of people by January. By the time we publish this podcast, their Kickstarter will be live. I'm not telling you to go back a Kickstarter. I have seen so many things go wrong with Kickstarters, so maybe wait for this to actually hit production. But
especially this isn't an established, like this isn't a peak design Kickstarter where they're just trying to figure out initial orders. This is a brand new, very technical product from a manufacturer we don't know.
So what do you think, Jordan? That shoots 4K at up to 1,000 FPS using a BSI CMOS sensor, which they say allowed them to essentially get better low light performance, which means you need less light to reach that 1,000 FPS, which would typically require quite a bit of light. And the samples they're showing look pretty good.
Yeah, the BSI thing is really odd to me because, yes, you do get slightly better low light performance on a BSI, but it's not as dramatic as, they're showing like without BSI and then with BSI, it's like 4 times as bright. That's not how that works. You'll get like a little improvement with it. I am curious, how this sensor actually performs because some of their samples do look pretty nice on there. But I think this is a really important sweet spot that is missing from the market, because if you're talking slow-mo, obviously we have like phantom cameras at the crazy high end and the rental, and I don't know if it's still the case, but the last time I looked at it, you'd also have to hire an operator to go along with the camera because those were so complicated to work with.
They're not easy.
There's just a complete lack of really good slow motion cameras in that kind of mid range. If you're doing like a lot of corporate work or something like that, where you could actually afford to own it, or, there's lots of options out there with just absolutely abysmal quality in this kind of range. So it does definitely fit a real niche, and it looks set up kind of just to slot right into a proper cinema camera workflow, takes V-mount batteries. A very straightforward kind of setup. It will be recording RAW, though we don't know which format at this point. So there are still some details to come. But I saw the initial like teasers on, I think it was like Instagram Reels or something, which is the most.
A lot of ads.
Yeah, well, that's generally, if I see something there, I'm like, oh, well, that's a legitimate product that will absolutely come to market. If it's on Reels, are you kidding me?
Sarcasm alert.
But looking at the website now, it does look like a real product. So I'm very interested in it. I don't know if it's something necessarily I want to review until it's like production, and we hear some more stories from it. But it definitely fills a hole in the market.
So their initial retail price, from what I can tell, is going to be $12,900. But they have like I don't know how many of these are going to offer, but they do have like an early bird pricing for it that'll put it at $7,500, which is outrageously low for a camera with the specs that this thing is claiming it can do. I think it's like also like at 2.5K, it'll do 1,800 frames per second. So like that's way slower than almost. I mean, that's so niche. You're not going to need that much slow motion for.
Oh, but if I had it, Jaron, every time I went to go take a shower, I would be dragging out this camera and just cascading water bouncing off my face. Of course, I'd have to, they're like, oh, you can light this with a small LED, but you're going to bump up against physics at a certain point. You're still going to have to shoot that at least 1,000th of a second shutter speed. So, you're going to need some light still. That part as well, I found a little bit hyperbolic.
Anyway, that's what they've said. 4.6K cinema camera that shoots at 4K for $1,000 for $7,500 at the low end and $12,500 at the high end, which is still reasonable for this. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll keep an eye on it. Next, let's talk about a scoop that I had last week, which is that Nikon, who said that they were going to evaluate the market to see if there was any need for them to make dedicated cinema lenses, has evaluated the market and determined that, yes, indeed, there is a need for them to make dedicated cinema lenses, but they will not be commenting further at this time. That's about it. What do you think, Jordan?
I mean, it makes perfect sense. They're already moving in that direction. And yeah, there is a real market for some first party. It's really the hybrid autofocus, manual focus that's compelling. Something like where Sigma just dropped their...
Fujifilm too. That is also a hybrid. So thank you for reminding me on this, for those that are curious how this works. Because Jordan, you and I, when we were over at Cinegear looking at Sigma's lenses, we were like, how is this doing good autofocus and also good feeling manual focus? It looks like everyone has finally come to the same conclusions and figured out how to do it. Because Fujifilm's works, I think, probably the same way that Sigma's does, and that it's using the linear motor just in tandem with the camera so well that it's just perfectly paired. It's
just nice and responsive, because I've always said there was the old Sony 28-135, which had a clutch and just a weird delay on it. I was always fighting to do focus pulls.
Just feels bad.
These feel great, so I have been really impressed on that. So yeah, if we could get a set of autofocus lenses that also have really nice manual focus action natively for Z-mount, so they can apply all of their corrections and stuff to it digitally. Because that's the other thing. A lot of cinema glass, you have to correct stuff optically because there's no pass-through in a lot of cases. I mean, we're starting to see it with higher-end lenses now where there's electronic communication.
Yeah, and these look
just
like
makes it so much easier. Yeah, these look like a bunch of small, matched, pretty little primes.
You'll notice that the gold is visible that we got for the first time on that 28-135 that you reviewed, and we were telling Nikon like, "Oh my God, the gold! You got to use that more." Well,
put it on everything.
They're putting it on these. So let me ask you: do you think that this is one lens that they lined up 6 times, or is this a series of lenses that are all supposed to look the same?
I think it's a series. I mean, we're already seeing Panasonic do that with their 1.8 series that I love. If you photographed them all in silhouette, they would all look the same. Same thing Canon's doing. And it's what cinema lens makers have been doing for a very long time. So again, just to differentiate it from all their photo lenses, I think they'd have to bring out some benefits for going with this series specifically for video, and having matched size and weight makes perfect sense.
They do appear to be geared. So we should expect clickless aperture and, that sort of thing. So
all the good stuff. And yeah, Nikon, we've said it repeatedly, they're killing it with glass right now. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. That 24-70-2.8 that we were saying, like, I don't know, let's see how that thing turns out. And then I shot the ZR video with it, and it's like, damn, this lens is yummy.
Really?
We haven't shot charts or anything with it yet, but yeah, I was very concerned, like, because it's so much smaller, bokeh might take a hit and stuff. And yeah, if you want to just ignore my dumb face and focus on the bokeh in the background of that video, you'll be like, oh man, that first zoom, that's got it going on.
So I forgot what I was. Oh, when do you think we're going to see these? So you can consider this a development announcement.
Yep.
I'm going to guess NAB.
I agree. Yeah, I think this is about enough lead time that they could have those out. The question is, are they going to stagger it like Canon, where you're like, what the hell is this 35? And then suddenly it makes sense 6 months later when the other lenses in the series are announced? Or are they going to drop them all?
Are they going to do it the way that Leitz is doing it? Look at that. So Leitz Cine announced that it has created a series of cinema lenses, but for mirrorless mounts. And by that, I mean specifically Sony E, Canon RF, Nikon Z, and L mount. So these aren't going to work with like dedicated cinema cameras necessarily, unless they are one of those mounts. Yeah. You can't do PL, for example.
Yeah, PL's a longer flange back.
Yeah. But these are designed, I think, for content creators, but it's lights.
Yeah, so you might be thinking, like, that's kind of a weird mid-range optical formula for them to suddenly have a bunch of these out. But you know what else sits right in between a mirrorless flange back and a PL is the M mount. And there is, if you look into the press release quite a bit, they're really, like, looking for an M mount photographic lens look, but in a proper cinema housing. I can say now, if you go back and check out our Light Lens Lab review that we did in Germany, I shot a chunk of that on the 50 millimeter for this series. It was natively L mount, just chonked it right on there. Felt great. Beautiful machining on this, and actually did have quite a bit of character. They were just like, here, you want to borrow this lens? And just don't tell anybody. And I'm like, but it's your 100th anniversary. There's photographers and videographers everywhere. They're like,
somehow
be
you told
sneaky,
no one.
be sneaky. Yeah. Do it. So fortunately, no one took a picture of us while we were shooting that. But yeah, it is very character forward. It's like kind of the opposite of those ISO lenses we were looking at, which were like, we want to keep things neutral, clean, sharp, and then, you know, you can muck with it in post or use filters or whatever. This is the complete opposite. They're like, it's not going to be optically flawless, but it's going to have bags of character. And I've only used the 50, but I would love to play with this whole series a little bit more.
Well, we're going to arrange that. Right now, we're in conversation with Leitz to try and get you samples. It's a busy period, so we'll probably not get to these until November, which is fine. But I am seeing some comments. Something may be worth considering, Jordan, is that how about these and those 7 Artisans Cineprimes?
Yeah.
It might be worth taking a look and comparing them to see if this is worth significantly more, because pricing, these are $73.90 each, $7,390, or the 6-lens set is $42,490. That's not exactly creator level pricing.
Nope,
so,
that's rental house pricing.
Yeah, so are they worth it? You're going to have to tell us when you get these in for a review.
That'll be fun.
Last thing on the news board before we start digging into some questions about what we've just discussed. Blackmagic has a really high-end dock for the iPhone that seems like kind of a lot for something that's a mobile phone.
It is. This is what's just hilarious with the iPhone thing is I really think they've just pushed this as far as they can. They're like, what else can we throw at it? I guess we'll need Genlock for multi-camera arrays, and, you know, locking connections to make it work with a video village. And yeah, there are lots of people who are shooting professional projects on iPhone. So it does make sense for those. It's just odd as like this seems like some sort of direct solution that Blackmagic would bring out as opposed to like a mainstream product that you'll be able to walk into B&H and grab. That's interesting to me. But we hear it all the time. Like Tyler Stallman, who was on the podcast last week, a huge chunk of his commercial jobs, they're hiring him to shoot it on iPhone. That is why they're booking him specifically. So there are people looking for that.
Did you see Apple using these in the podcasting room? Or like, how are they doing that? Like how?
No, so it was just the phones, just on little tripods there. I was thinking, you know, they might all be wired in, but they're probably just running it through Final Cut camera, so it doesn't need to be wired in. That does the proper sync for everything as well. I mean, Yeah, and that was the older phone on it. They didn't have the 16s in there. So you can really tell, or the 17s, I'm sorry. So you can really tell in that podcast when we cut from the wide to the telephoto camera on there. Like I understand Apple wants it to be all Apple top to bottom, but I kind of miss a couple of years ago when we were there and we got shot with cabrio lenses on cinema bodies.
Yeah, you can tell. Sweet. You can tell those are iPhones. So the other thing too, apparently I didn't notice because I was editing it on my laptop screen and I didn't see any frame rate tearing. But apparently on my export there was some frame rate issues maybe where I should have chosen frame blending instead of whatever I did choose. I apologize for that. I don't know whose fault it was, probably mine. So don't blame the Apple Studio for that necessarily. You can go ahead and blame me if you notice some problems with the footage.
And if you want to blame Jaron, he'll respond quickly to your accusations if you're a PetaPixel member.
Yes, just send me an email and be like, you suck. I'm like, all right, I do.
All right, are you a member? Like, yes, I am. Okay, noted.
Noted, I do indeed suck.
Yeah.
Okay, so with all the news behind us, let's talk a little bit more about how these things matter in the wider context of the industry. So let's talk about the FX3, a camera that is now a little older, and both the C50 and the ZR perhaps. Do you see these? Where do you see this whole thing shaken out? Are people going to switch from the FX3 to one of these others? Should they?
I mean, that's the tough thing. When we were at Apple Park, I would say, like, not even exaggerating, a third of the people walking around have FX3s. Like that has become the de facto creator camera for like a mid-range, high, like the kind of people who would get invited to an Apple launch. Basically, they're selling truckloads of those cameras.
Margot on the boat company boat had one too, right? That was like her camera.
Yeah, the 3 as well. If people are looking at more serious production, it just seems to be that is the recommended camera because it does do a lot right. You know, you can shoot good slow motion with it. It's got lots of rigging points. It doesn't overheat. A lot of those, pain points where you're using a regular mirrorless camera are addressed with it. I've always been like, look, I want an EVF and, the Panasonic articulation and stuff like that. And also the FX3 took a long time to get a lot of what I consider like base level professional features like shutter angle and stuff like that. When it first launched, it was a pretty basic camera. It's actually come quite a long ways from that, like being able to put your own LUTs in it now and stuff like that. But it is still held back by the fact like that is an old camera. It doesn't even have Sony's AI autofocus chip in it to really help, which makes a massive difference for autofocus. So there's definitely room, and Sony certainly doesn't seem to be in a rush to replace it. They've just made down market models, the FX30, the FX2, which both have the AI chip, but not the fast scan of the FX3. So it's due, basically. And now you do see Nikon and Canon both jumping in at the exact same point. The thing is, the Sony is so well established at this point, and in terms of glass, it is really compelling to just be like, look, anything I want, I can get on E-mount, basically. And you can adapt with RF and Z-mount, but you're certainly getting into a more limited ecosystem at that point. So that's the big struggle, because if you look at it on paper, I think both Canon and Nikon are offering more for the dollar, no question.
Yeah, so the FX3 is $4,000, $4,100.
41, I believe. Yeah.
4,098 is what I'm looking at here. So 41.
Yeah.
There is something that the C50 does that neither the ZR or the FX3 do, and that's open gate. Mm-hmm. And so my question to you, Jordan, is how important is open gate? I think that, and then what's holding them back? My guess for the FX3 is Sony's codec. Might be why they can't do it. And then for Nikon, I don't know why they don't do it.
Talking to Nikon when we were doing our ZR hands-on there, I'm just like, this sensor is fast enough. Like, what is the limiting factor here? And it's just R&D is what I hear. Like, we have to develop a new format for that, which I can absolutely understand for shooting compressed video, but for RAW, like, just give me the whole image.
Yeah.
Just put it on put it on the card for me and let me use it however I want.
Because like with OpenGate you can do anamorphic. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's better for it because if we put, we were having this conversation. You put a 2x squeeze on a 16:9 image capture, and you now have like a 3:1 aspect ratio video that looks stupid. So you can put something with a heavier squeeze factor onto a more boxy sensor and still arrive at like a usable aspect ratio. So it's really good in that regard. And most of those classic anamorphic things were designed for, a strip of film going through them, which is a boxier aspect ratio. So it's really important to have that. And I'm glad Canon's introducing it. That means we'll probably see support for open gate on other cameras like the R5 II. That sensor reads out more than fast enough that it could also support open gate. The R1.
Jordan, as we previously discussed, open gate and anamorphic is only for cinematographers.
The R5 II is only for wildlife photographers.
Correct. That is not the end user for that. So why would Canon put it in there? They're very stringent about it. But what I will say is at least Canon putting it in a camera period. Most of them, Canon, Nikon, and Sony were able to pretend that Lumix didn't exist because their market share is pretty small for a long time. As soon as one of them does it, though, of those three who they're constantly staring at each other from their buildings in Tokyo and New York, at least Canon and Nikon, Sony's in San Diego, but like they all see each other, and as soon as one of them does it, the other ones will, I think, quickly clamor to follow because they don't want to be the ones to not have it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. But then, the IBIS thing as well. I think Sony really hit it with the FX3. It's not good IBIS. Like, it's a little jittery and jumpy and stuff. But people wanted to know you could just hand hold it.
Right? Sony's IBIS is weak in general.
Yeah, it's very effective for photo. I think that's what it's optimized for. I really think it's that smaller flange on it. You're bumping up against the edges of it, and you can't do anything at that point. If you've got a little bit more clearance on all the sides, there's a little bit more room for it to, as opposed to just we hit the edge, it bounces now, kind of break it a little bit. That's what we're seeing with a lot of the other IBIS solutions. Like Nikon's, if you use the right settings with it, is very effective. I'd say it's something I would absolutely use all the time if you set it to sports mode. So again, on paper, looks better than the FX3. The question is, FX3 is so successful, is Sony just going to drop a replacement now that there's all these different things they can add to it? That AI thing, they could put, one of the very fast, partially stacked or fully stacked sensors in there. There's room in it. I just don't know when they do it because IBC has passed now. That's why we saw that deluge of stuff last week. And then the next big one is NAB in April. That does give Nikon and Canon a fair amount of time to make some real sales and get some converts.
It's been real quiet on the Sony front for a little while now.
It's been a weird year for sure. I don't think the FX2 counts as a super compelling new body. It really felt like, here's the parts that we've still got. Let's combine them into something. Well, it's hideous, but whatever. It's sort of functional. I don't mind that camera, but we're just not seeing, A1 II, same deal. Just not a lot of new compelling stuff.
All right. The next thing I got here is a question from YouTube. That is from Answer is 4217, which is a really weird username. I was struggling here. How was I going to say that?
I just want to know what the question would be for that.
Answer is. So the question from Answer is. See how confusing that is?
Oh, God. What are we doing?
Yeah, that's why I was like, how do I say this?
People thought that one intro I did on the podcast was confusing. They're throwing their headphones at the wall right now.
So the question from Answer is obviously no camera is perfect. My only question about the Eterna is the rolling shutter. Is it an issue with this camera, and was it hard to work around it if it was? Now, before you answer, Jordan, I want everyone to know Jordan is no longer being told or sponsored in any way to offer his opinion on this. This is true Jordan thoughts. Jordan?
My true Jordan thoughts on this are, when you're doing full width on that sensor, it is binning. So it's able to get the information from both sides of the frame fast enough that it's like manageable. You're around 20 millisecond readout on it. I wouldn't use a telephoto. Like if you see, we used a lot of telephotos in this, like the 100 to 200 and the 500. everything that's going to be in the film is going to be the locked off shots where we're using it for that compression, or like, holy hell, there's a bear right there, get the big lens. But yeah, not a lot of fast panning and stuff like that. And then if you want a more detailed image where it's giving you, the higher resolution, like the 8K, or any of those higher res modes, you are cropping in at that point, and your rolling shutter, contrary to most cameras, will actually increase because now it's reading out more pixels in order to do that. So in the 8K modes, yeah, it is quite slow. I believe it's around like high 30s at that point, which is going to be difficult to work with. So that's what I say.
Moving. If the camera's not moving, you don't notice it. So like for a lot of
even like Chris with a fly rod, I'm like, we are not shooting him in high resolution. That's going to look really goofy. So depends how fast your subject's moving, if there's any horizontal movement on it. But yeah, you just have to be very selective. And when we were testing that, we had a like reboot process when we were changing frame rate because the camera's not finished yet. So we were very loath to, this shot, things aren't moving. Let's jump over to high resolution recording or something. So pretty much everything you'll see there is the full width recording on the cameras in that, which means it is binned in it. And that does have some limitations in terms of your resolution. It's a sensor where you're making compromises based on whatever you're trying to achieve and whichever lens you put on it. So if you're going to try one out for a project, it just means you really need to do your research and know going into it, like, okay, we want more detail on this and we're not worried about rolling shutter. Fantastic. Or, that movie was largely shot at 60 frames per second. So that's all going to be the full width, 16:9 binned mode on it. That's the trade-off. And as long as you're aware of that, you can really work within it. I think we pulled it off, but you got to do your research beforehand.
Another comment is from Zetify. That looked like an amazing experience. I see that times were used on your trip. I'm curious if there are any medium format zoom lenses for the Eterna. I have no idea what I see that times were used on your trip means, so we're going to ignore that. But he did ask, I'm curious if there are any medium format zoom lenses, actually. So I think they were asking specifically zooms, and you mentioned one. You did have a zoom.
Yeah, we had the 1:2. We also shot, on the first day we went out, it was pouring rain, and so I just grabbed the 45-100 and 100-200 GF zooms, which are not cinema lenses. And to be honest, I had a really tough time with them because I had to manually pull focus with those. It's not properly geared. I couldn't use my nucleus system, so I couldn't put it up on my shoulder. That was tough. But the good news is what I wanted on this shoot, the 32-90 GF cinema lens has been announced, which will have autofocus as well as proper manual focus performance. So things like that are coming. And you'll be able to slap a lot. Like if you go to a rental house and they have lenses that support old formats like VistaVision, IMAX, stuff like that, that glass is going to work on there. And there are some zooms. They're just not that common. Generally, when you're at that tier and that kind of coverage, it's going to be a lot of primes, but there just haven't been affordable cameras with a sensor this big. So we're going to start to see more of them pop up. I bet we'll see some of the lens manufacturers who have already started doing medium format primes like Laowa. I bet they'll jump on, making a few basic zoom options with really good controls on it. Or you can suck it up and get the Fujifilm.
I have actually heard lens manufacturers specifically bring up the Eterna 55 more commonly now. Like when I was at IBC, they were bringing it up, not me, about like lenses that they're thinking about and what their actual coverage of their lenses are, is a conversation that they are more willing to have now that the camera is like actually announced and coming by in the next month or so.
Yeah. The other thing, too, we should point out is how much of the glass designed for full frame, as we photographers like to call it, did actually cover. There was a little bit of vignetting on some of those, not some with hard vignetting, like our Atlas 54 did have a hard vignette on it, but most of them, it's something that was correctable in post. So, you can certainly get away with some full frame zooms on this as well.
Yeah. I think would you be, I'd like you to. So I'd like you to say yes. Can you
no
review the 32-90?
No. That's interesting. Let me give it a think. Let's see when it's actually finished and what my schedule looks like.
Done. I saw it. They have them finished now. Yeah, they weren't available for our.
Jaron, if it's in the near future, then no.
Oh, how about in December?
Maybe. I don't know, man. Let's see how it shakes out.
Yeah, it's been a busy year. Okay, next thing I wanted to ask you about stuff that was announced this past week was how much of Apple's marketing turned out to be real in the iPhone thing, like where they would claim something and you'd be like, I don't know, sounds a little Apple-y to me. How much of that actually was like, okay, fair?
I mean, we'll have the full review coming out on that. I would say, like, the new telephoto is better, unquestionably, and that's been Apple's biggest weak point. They get
was it because they changed the sensor?
Yeah, I mean, it's physically a larger sensor. Like, just saying, like, oh, it's now a quad Bayer, that doesn't make a big difference, but because it is physically larger. And I love that there's less of a gap now between the I'd say like the 35 millimeter equivalent in their Fusion camera is like your last really usable one. As much as I love the 2x, I would never actually like print it or, even full screen it really. So now having that, 35 to 100 is much more manageable for me. That's a nice usable gap in there. And results are pretty similar, if you were to zoom the 4x into the 5x that we had previously, but I'd rather have the 4x. So that's great. As I mentioned, a lot of the other stuff, it's really tough to gauge like thermals and things like that, because that was the biggest part of their keynote was dedicated to like things that they've changed in order to improve the thermals on it. Because, the 16s could sometimes get really hot. But it's also something where I'm struggling to have a definitive answer at this point. The other stuff like twice as durable scratch resistance. We have an amazing test in Chris's dad wallet, which by halfway through, like the credit card scratched the screen, with the 15, it took like a quarter of a year before it got scratched. And then with the 16, it was half a year. So if their claims are correct and it's twice as good, by the next keynote, if we don't have a scratch on his screen, then their claims are completely founded. But this is the closest thing to an objective benchmark that we can have for that.
What an absolutely bizarre way to test it. But if you think about it, it does make sense. He's rubbing those plastic numbers up against that screen daily. Yeah. Constantly rubbing. And the fact that it lasts half a year without scratch is actually pretty good considering.
And he's a back pocketer, which is madness. I can't imagine living life on the edge like that. But.
Oh, man. So one thing I actually wanted to ask is how big of a deal was the square sensor on the front of the camera? Or the front?
It's really... You actually haven't seen the rough yet on the iPhone video. So
here's in the dark here, so I'm curious.
So here's where we're at. It's really great usability, like to be able to hold the camera upright and just switch between landscape and vertical. Some people come in the sides of the frames, it expands. That's really great. And if you compare the image quality on when it's zoomed all the way back on the selfie camera to last year's model, it is significantly better. It's more detailed, just a better image overall, which makes sense. It's using, a physically larger sensor there. However, when you zoom in, when it's just you in the frame, you're using basically the same amount, and there the image quality is almost identical. So it's a real case-by-case basis on that.
Can you force it to always be wider?
Yeah, you can. Absolutely. You can turn auto off and just.
Well, the reason I ask is I know you can't force it to go open gate. Like you have to pick. Which is
and it makes perfect sense. I think the lens just doesn't cover the corners, because if it's, a circular lens, you could have it so it covers the far sides on both, but the corners might be a little rocky if you make that lens as small as possible, which they would with the selfie camera. So all the people crying for like, why can't we see the whole image? I bet it's because there's actually like a hard vignette in the corners there.
Right, which you would not see on any of the formats that it gives you. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. And then open gate in video, like I love having that option, but you do lose stabilization and you have to shoot it in ProRes RAW, which means using an external drive. We were misinformed at the Apple event. I've put a correction on the video there. But you need to record to an external drive if you're recording ProRes RAW in the open gate format. So it's a cool thing to see. I'll be more excited when you can record it compressed in the camera natively, because I think it's hugely useful for content creators. I use OpenGate all the time if something might be vertical.
Yeah. So how much of what they didn't say should they have said? Like what did you like? There's usually something every year where it's like, wait a minute, why didn't they advertise this in the keynote? This is amazing.
The open gate would have been the big one for sure. Just being able to say, yes, you do have that option to reframe. But I think the reason they didn't is because there's so many asterisks on it. You know, lose your stabilization, only available when recording ProRes RAW externally. And you have to remember at the time of the keynote, ProRes RAW wasn't available in Resolve, which is the biggest grading package out there. That's changed since. So I think that's why they did it. That was the big one that really jumped out to me. As well as like they didn't say what kind of telephoto, like optically, what kind of formula it was, which seemed really odd to me because they made such a huge deal about how they designed their tetraprism thing back when the
they mentioned
Pro
it was
Max
tetraprism, right? They didn't? They didn't say
no,
tetraprism?
they didn't. We had to talk to them afterwards. We're like, have you moved to a periscope? Like, what's going on here? I thought that was really surprising as well. And just the usual smartphone thing of like, hey, can you give us the sizes of those sensors? And they say like, absolutely not right now. And you will never find out the size of those, the physical dimensions of those sensors. You can do a little math and figure out which sensor it is. But like, just be transparent. Just tell us what's actually there.
All of the smartphone makers are getting more and more
They're
cagey
all
about
terrible that way.
All right, last thing. You mentioned it. What is the deal with ProRes RAW? You were very excited about it last week.
Yeah, so the big thing is it now has support in DaVinci Resolve, which, like I said, is the biggest grading platform out there. And that's been the real issue with widespread adoption on it at this point. And it makes sense because they have their own competing RAW format, the B-RAW. But because of that, pretty much all of the camera manufacturers in like the mirrorless space have gone to ProRes RAW as their RAW recording format, usually kicking it out to an Atomos, although we're starting to see more and more cameras like Panasonic is just throwing it natively in. So now to have the option for RAW video, you know, readily supported in the most popular thing with a whole bunch of new cameras, that's a massive deal. You know, if you own any of these Fujifilm or Sony or Panasonic cameras, now you do have a real RAW workflow if you're working in Resolve. So that is a big deal. But the other thing that was really compelling to me is friend of the show, former guest Alex Mitchell, has a Blackmagic Pocket 4K. He shot a little bit of ProRes RAW and B-RAW, and the image is dramatically different. So I'm not going to spoil. We're going to be doing some testing, but it looks like there might actually be a quality difference case by case in terms of which format you use, which is interesting to me because you'd think it's a debayered video stream. Like, how different could it be from one format to the other? The answer is clearly very different. So yeah, stay tuned. I'm hoping we'll be able to do a full episode. If not, at the very least on the podcast, maybe we'll get Alex on and we'll talk through some of his findings. I think that would be fun. But yeah, it opens up RAW video for a whole bunch of people. And that's really exciting.
Okay. That's a lot. Jordan, your voice must be tired.
Jaw. I'm not used to this. Usually I just get to kick back and
watch
Chris says filthy things. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is probably going to be short because both you and I basically have already talked about what we've been up to. But what have you been up to? Editing?
I got nothing, man. I could have said the family went to Monster Jam again this year, but sadly I missed out. So,
oh man.
Volunteering for my kid's hockey because he's doing like a hockey community league. So house league. So you have to do a certain amount of volunteer hours, and let me tell you, they don't need as many volunteers as they bring in for that. Yeah. Like, you know. They need for 3 hours to walk kids over to stand by one section of the wall every 15 minutes. They need an entire volunteer for that. And then the other day, it's like a bunch of like 14 to 16-year-olds playing hockey. And they're like, oh, you can open and close the gate for them. Like, no, they are fully capable of opening and closing the gate by themselves. So yeah, I stayed there and watched them open and close the gate for several hours until my volunteer hour time had been paid up. So that's what I've been up to, Jaron. Other than that, I've been working on an iPhone video, which I hope is finished by the time this podcast comes out.
I sure hope so too. So as mentioned, I was in Amsterdam for a very short amount of time. I was there for 2 days just to go to IBC and also go to Fujifilm's launch event for the GFX Eterna 55. A couple things. I bought a bunch of chocolate for my wife, which she's working her way through now. I spent a half day shooting a roll and a half or so on the Contax G2.
Oh, Chris will be happy there.
Yeah, I'm actually using it, and it's been fun. And then terrible news, Jordan. It rained heavily one night right after dinner, and so I was working my way back to my hotel. I went to the main central train station to get on a light rail train to take me back to the hotel, and they have like this, the moving walkways?
Yeah.
Well, this one was sloped downward, and it had been raining heavily, and I wasn't necessarily wearing the best slip-proof shoes.
Oh, no.
And so I ate it on that walkway, and I can show it here. I've got like a I got a scab on.
Oh God! Oh,
so if you
just
can imagine,
cut it off.
Well, that's not the bad news. The bad news is I was wearing my really nice Japanese blue jeans that I bought with Richard Butler 2 years ago in Japan, that on his recommendation, and they now have a giant hole in the knee because I fell on it. So now I have to go back to Japan, go back to that shop, and ask them if it can be repaired and how much that's going to cost me. But I'm sad because those are my nice jeans.
That's terrible. So is this now you're taking back the Richard Butler recommendation because these jeans could so easily be torn by the Amsterdam streets?
No,
Okay.
I think I'll maintain them. They're still good jeans. I pushed them too hard.
Was there any weird surprise or like someone you bumped into unexpectedly at IBC? I'm curious.
Yeah, I was walking around and I literally walked into Kazuto Yamaki from
sweet.
Sigma. Yeah, so saw him, and then we went and chit-chatted for a while about an upcoming project. So stay tuned for that. But
Sick.
No, I didn't see anyone else. I will say that the European teams for Canon and Nikon are great. Like Canon Europe, lovely team.
Yeah, just a bunch of charmers.
Yeah, Nikon Europe, also really nice people, really great. When someone says they're going to send me an image, it usually takes a while. That image that I ran for that the cinema lenses story, they got that to me inside of like 10 minutes. Like that was lightning fast. So really happy about that. Yeah, great people. Show is weirdly structured. Like the halls are really broken up, so like getting around it is kind of confusing. The doors are confusing, but it was a neat show. We should go sometime, Jordan. I think you'd like it. Plus, Amsterdam's neat. So
I'd love to.
All right, let's do some tech support. Let's start with a question.
Video only, right? No one's going to ask me about like film developing or something, right, Jaron?
I think I'm going to have to take that one. The first one, though, is from Sebastian Kraus. It's a question on YouTube on the ZR. I've got 3 questions that haven't been answered yet by any review.
Sorry, 30?
3.
Oh, okay, good.
3 questions. Well, for what it's worth, if anyone actually said they reviewed this camera, they lied to you because you can't review a pre-production camera. So that might be why your questions haven't been answered, because we haven't done our full review yet. Jordan has only done a preview.
We got a very limited time with that camera. I'm looking forward to doing a full project with it.
But let's see if you can answer these 3 questions, or at least maybe you'll have an answer eventually. So the first question is, will it be possible to record 4 channels of audio when using an XLR adapter?
No, 2 only. So you can use the currently available Tascam adapter and get 2 XLRs, or you can just plug right in and get stereo through the 3.5 jack. So at this time, it is just a 2-channel system.
Second question, is there any clear image zoom as found in Sony and Panasonic cameras?
There is. They don't have their own name for it, but Nikon, because there's an oversampled sensor on that, and there's a cute little zoom rocker on there, you can enable it so it will zoom in. If you're recording 4K, you'll get like basically a full frame to an APS-C size zoom coming off of that, and that will be visually lossless, as they like to say. It's not going to be quite as detailed, but it's still acceptable 4K if you use that digital zoom on it.
Final question, will it be possible to bake in LUTs, or will a preview LUT remain as the sole option?
Absolutely you can, but only with red LUTs. So if you copy those into the camera, you can cook them right onto your footage and throw away all of the dynamic range and wonderful things about shooting log or recording raw video. I'm not a huge fan of baking stuff in, but I guess if you're live streaming and you've got a specific look in mind, rock on, man.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, but why would you want to? But okay,
I still, that's the only use I can find besides people are scared of log workflows, which have gotten really straightforward in the last few years. So,
all right, next one is an email from Tobias, PetaPixel follower from Sweden here. Since you have audiences from all over the world, it is a shame we don't see more smartphone camera reviews from you guys other than the Samsungs and iPhones. And he didn't say Google's, but he Google's too. And I know that US, Canada are your main markets. The Xiaomi 15 Ultra, Sony Xperia 1 7, we're already up to the 7, geez. OnePlus and Oppo and so on rarely get reviews from real professionals like Chris and Jordan, whom have real experience in photo video cameras and aren't paid to say positive stuff. Would be fun to see more reviews from you, Jaron, since you also seem to have a good idea of what you're talking about. Lies! Keep up the good work, Tobias.
See my question at the start of this episode where I said my least favorite thing to review is smartphones.
Yeah, and also there are some very real limitations with accessibility to these here. Could we get some of these phones? Yes. Would the majority of the people who watch the channel be able to actually purchase these phones and use them? That's a little bit less clear. But there is cases where we're like, can we get one? And we're told no. Yeah. And that's from like Sony. Like, we can't get an Xperia phone. We've asked, and they've stopped selling them in this region, so they don't provide them in this region anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing there is, like, we will do our regular check-in with Ted Chrysonis, who does, like, the written reviews on those. But, yeah, it is really difficult. Like, cameras, we review basically every camera that hits market, and I can keep that stockpiled in my head right now. But unless we're regularly reviewing every year's model from these smartphones, it's very difficult for me to just be like, is that better than last? Like, is that improved? It's a real struggle. And we certainly had an issue with that, with the OnePlus being thrown in our smartphone comparison. Because we had done full reviews of the other three cameras, I don't think it got a fair shake, honest. Like, it didn't get tested as much as the other ones. So yeah, it would have to be full reviews on all of those. And that's a huge commitment. And I don't know if the views would justify it.
I will say that
that's why
on
Ted
the website,
rocks.
Yeah, on the website, views are very low for these models. And even though you are correct, we have a majority in like North America, it's still only like 30% of our total reader and viewership. But for some reason, y'all still don't care enough about these to read the reviews. So that greatly informs what we do on the multimedia side. So if the written reviews are not popular, why would we think that the videos would be?
Yep.
Next one is an email from Renaud. Dear Jaron, Chris, and Jordan. Renaud.
You're only getting two, Renaud. Sorry.
Yeah, I see that now. He's told me how to pronounce his name, and I did it incorrectly. I apologize, Renaud. Being a happy user of both a GH7 and an S5 II, I really miss the hybrid zoom function on the GH7. I can't overstate how amazing this feature is on the S5 II in particular in video. For listeners who are not familiar with the latest Lumix full-frame cameras, this is essentially a very clever implementation of the oversampling algorithm that, quote, crops in your sensor surface as you zoom in to extend your zoom reach on the long end while maintaining 4K quality and not modifying your wide end. The sampling never gets to less than 1-to-1 pixel mapping, if I can explain it this way. This feature is not only clever technically, it is implemented with perfect ergonomics and customizability, making it a breeze to use. Big kudos to Panasonic engineers for pulling that out. Do you guys happen to know why this function is not available on the GH7? Given this is all about the number of pixels and not the sensor size, the GH7 26 megapixel sensor should be as capable of hybrid zooming, if not a tad more than the S5 II's 24 megapixels, unless I'm missing something. Do you have any insights about what could be the limiting factor? I often hear Jordan mentioning his 10 to 25. That lens is glued to my GH7. Being able to toggle the hybrid zoom would make it even more versatile. Love your podcast, videos, and written pieces. Cheers from Europe to the entire PetaPixel team. Renaud. Thank you, Renaud. Jordan?
So I do think there's something to do with the lens protocols, because you have to remember it is, as you're twisting the zoom ring on there, it is simultaneously applying a digital crop. And if there's any delay whatsoever, it's going to look and feel super weird when you're doing that. So when they first announced this feature on the S5 II, they said because of our communication with the L mount, we are able to do this. And I strongly suspect that, you know, back when they originated the Micro Four Thirds standard, that was a long time ago, done in conjunction with Olympus. Possibly it just is not set up for transmitting zoom information as fast as it's required, or in a way where it makes this hybrid zoom capability work, because otherwise, like you said, the resolution's there, the processors, I believe, are the same on the GH7 and the modern L-mount cameras, so it should work. I'll talk to Panasonic next time they do a launch here and see if maybe we can get an answer for you from them on that, but that is the implication, I would say, from previous conversations I've had with them.
The next is an email from Jonas Wells, or Jonas, depending on where he lives. I have been photographing for a long time now, and 2 years ago started taking analog photos again. Now I would like to start getting into printing to get physical copies of my
God,
pictures.
this is exactly what I dreaded.
But I already struggle getting consistent looks between my different devices. I scan my developed negatives myself and edit them in Lightroom on a Windows computer. Though I get happy with the results on this computer, watching the pictures, for example, on my phone, they look completely different already, especially in terms of brightness. Recently, I did a photo book print after a vacation. I was very unhappy since the results looked very dark and dull, even though the pictures look good on my computer. It's a Framework 13, which I don't have experience with, but any tips and tricks for getting more control over the workflow and achieving constant results is greatly appreciated. Please keep up the good work, Jonas. So, looking at your complaints, it sounds like a display issue. It sounds like your Framework 13 monitor is not giving you the same levels of brightness and color and accuracy that like an iPhone would, and certainly a printer would. I think iPhone does not get enough credit for how excellent the color is on the display. It's like really, really good. So my suggestion is unfortunately to spend more money and pick up an external monitor that more closely mirrors what you would see on an iPhone, or even like just get like an OLED display or even a high-end LCD. I'm guessing you're editing in like true SDR and you can't see what it would display at, but then the printing doesn't make a ton of sense. I just think it's not bright enough.
It's a real struggle. So my solution to this has basically been, like, I don't print very often. So if I do, I'll go actually bring the image to the printer, look at it on a monitor that's calibrated for their stuff, and make sure that everything's good before we go. But having even a calibrated monitor is not very useful for people displaying on, the big, bright, oversaturated monitors that most people are viewing things on right now. Like I used to have a reference monitor for our YouTube show. Not anymore. I'm like, most of the time people will be seeing this on their phone, on a really punchy computer monitor. So I grade on one of those now with the expectation of that. So yeah, you could absolutely just plug into your TV even, where it's going to be punchy, oversaturated. It's not great, but it's going to be a closer representation to what people are going to see when they're looking at it on their other devices.
I'm seeing some people talking about the display being bright and with no issues there. So here's the other thing I'm going to suggest, especially if it's printing you're most concerned about. You might want to send them to someone who can scan them and has a lot of experience with scanning and processing. I'm lucky because I have access to Blue Moon Camera and Machine here in Portland. You can always work with them if you want to. You can send them negatives and they'll scan them. Another good resource, it's also in the United States, so I hope that's where you are. Digital Silver Imaging. Their website is digitalsilverimaging.com. They have a lot of experience scanning film, and they have a phase 1 camera to do it with.
Yes,
so you did
an article on that.
Not yet. I want to. I'm still waiting to finish that. But yeah, they scanned one of my pictures, my 35 millimeter frames at 150 megapixels. Is that more resolution than the 35 millimeter frame has? Yes. But you can at least, now you can start compressing and cropping down and you can get it to like the highest point possible. But like the results are beautiful, and they will also print for you, and they'll send you samples on paper so you could actually see what that looks like and actually tune the work for print. And I think if you're going to print, it's worth the extra time and effort to do that well, because the print's going to sit on a wall. So it's worth the time, or it's going to be in a book or whatever it is you want to do with it. So without knowing more about your process and what's going on, like what camera you're using for scanning and whatnot, I think maybe going with someone who can scan for you and get you really good results. It really helps when it's also your printer, like it is with Digital Silver Imaging. Yeah. That's a good route to go. And I can say their work is outstanding. Like I've got several things printed with Digital Silver Imaging, and I'm really happy. Next one is from Tor24Tor. It's an email. Why is Micro Four Thirds mostly about OM System and rarely about Panasonic Lumix? Is there nothing new coming from Panasonic? Jordan?
Yeah, this is on me. I'm sorry. I've been trying to beat the Panasonic Micro Four Thirds drum as hard as I can, but they're not listening. Yeah, they're distracted because they have 2 different lens mounts and they've been insanely active in L mount. They dropped 3 cameras last year.
Yeah, and it's a relatively small portion of Panasonic's whole business. Like, you can think of it as a small company.
Yeah, now that said, I love the Micro Four Thirds lineup. I also think it's just fairly fleshed out. If you look at the last 2 lenses they launched, it was just minor updates to existing optics that they've already had. So I just don't think they're throwing as much R&D at it right now, which is, again, unfortunate because there's still things the GH7 does that nothing else does.
Yep, I like the GH7. It's what I shoot.
Great
my
camera.
Video on. Yep. Last one is an email from Joseph. Excuse me. Hi, Chris, Jordan, and Jaron. In this case, just Jordan and Jaron.
Yeah,
I love the
sorry about
podcast and always look forward to listening to it.
33% disappointed.
Also, I became a member recently. Woo! Woo! Thank you very much. I purchased the Fuji X-T32 as a travel camera because of the size. My main camera is a Canon R6 Mark I. My question regarding the Fuji X-T32, would I have any issues with the camera in a high humidity environment like Orlando, Florida? Thank you, and looking forward to hearing from you, Joseph from Pasadena.
Yeah, and those unsealed cameras, you certainly can. I mean, if it's anything like sitting underneath a garbage bag in Alaska in the pouring rain.
Or Chris just standing in the pouring rain.
I mean, that was an XT50, but yeah, same kind
also
of.
Not
like,
sealed.
Yeah, exactly. Same level of build on that. It did a incredible job. I'm shocked. When we're just like, Chris, pull the camera out. We need this shot. I'm like, and the side effect may be that camera is destroyed forever, but at least we'll have gotten the shot. But no, it absolutely survived. So this is a tough one because it is very case by case. There might be some, weird situation on a particular temperature at a certain humidity level where that camera has real issues. But in my experience shooting consumer grade cameras, like the last time we were in Florida, it was reviewing fairly basic Canon mirrorless cameras and no issues whatsoever. So I don't want to guarantee it. They're certainly not rating it as sealed against high humidity. But in my own personal experience, I haven't really had that many issues, and I've shot quite a bit in very humid areas.
Yeah, and the Eterna didn't die. It wasn't weather sealed. As you were saying, you were under a shower cap, steaming it up in there.
It's also $16,500 US dollars.
They didn't seal it, so it doesn't matter how much it costs.
Yeah, exactly. And it lived.
Point. Case by case basis, the answer is maybe not.
I don't want to be responsible for bricking that camera. Would I bring an XT32 of my own out there? Yeah, absolutely I would.
But again, Jordan is not responsible for the any action.
I am not responsible. No liability. Put the things at the bottom there. Have someone talk fast and legalese. Jordan Drake doesn't know what the hell he's talking about and does not represent the opinions of Fujifilm or PetaPixel.
Gotta say it really fast though. Speed it up a little bit. Yeah. All right. Feel good story of the week time. This one was kind of cute. So I don't know if I mentioned, I feel like I did on a podcast before. I mentioned that
I think you said it's coming up.
The Kodak Charmera, which is a blind box digital keychain camera. Here's mine. This is what it looks like. Let's see if I can get my camera to actually. There it is.
A little cutie pie.
Little tiny thing. There's a little sensor on the little screen. My screen came scuffed, so there you go. I didn't do that. This little viewfinder here, this rangefinder, that is just a hole. There's nothing. I don't actually think it gives you a perfect view of what you're looking at, and I don't know why you'd use it since the screen is live view. But these things, this was the most popular story on the website for a solid week. So nobody cared about that C50. They cared about the Charmera. This thing sold out.
We're doing this all wrong.
It's sold out within days. It's currently unavailable. I think that yes, is it really Kodak? No, it's from Rito. But this was a good idea to blind box it. Yeah. Because that's a thing. I mean, people point to what Labubu's now as the blind box thing, but blind boxes have been around for a while. Yeah. It's just how they be. They're really popular. I gotta assume they're gonna make more because these things are great. They're neat. They're not expensive, and the box is really nice. The cameras are cute. I just thought it was nice that something silly and kind of stupid is doing well, and so I'm gonna put this on my bag. And
can you shoot the thumbnail for this episode on that camera?
Oh God, hold on. Turned it on. There's a little screen. And then let's
I like
see
the
here.
sound.
Select mode. We're going to go like here we go.
Just pretend you're holding a C50.
There we go. And then we'll hit the play button. Come on. There we go. Hold on. There you go.
Can you promise me that you will flash that on screen for people watching on YouTube at the end of this episode?
Oh, it's going to be on right.
Vaguely like me.
It is. I mean, it's your face. You're smiling. You look happy. I don't think that this is going to look great. But I'll put it up on screen right now. You tell me. Anyway, it's cute.
Perfect.
I'm not going to put an affiliate link or anything for it. Because
I feel good, so this story worked.
Have fun with photography, all right? That's the thing. Always have fun. And with that, let's say we're going to close it for this week. I do believe that Chris and Jordan have plans next week. We can't say what they are. They will not be around, so we will not have the podcast next week, but we will be back October 1st. And with that,
bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.